Hey, Everballers. If you haven't joined Stitcher Premium yet, now's the perfect time. Stitcher Premium gets you completely ad-free episodes of hundreds of shows like Comedy Bang Bang, WTF with Mark Maron, How Did This Get Made, and so many more. You can get 21,000 hours of exclusive content and new exclusive originals like Marvel's Wolverine, Issa Rae's Fruit, launching every week for Stitcher Premium. Members only. If you love podcasts, you are missing out. When you listen to ad-free episodes in Stitcher Premium, best of all, your favorite podcasters get paid. Help support your favorite shows. Join Stitcher Premium today. For a free month of listening, you can go to StitcherPremium.com and use the promo code VERBAL. That's STITCHER Premium.com. Use the promo code VERBAL.
Welcome to the Solid Verbal. The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildebrand. Joining me, as always, over there in New York City, my good friend, the man with the plan. Don't know what else I can call him, but Dan Rubenstein. Sir, how are you?
I'm good. I got my quarter mile time to an all-time 2018 low today.
Whoa.
So I'm feeling great.
Do you live your life a quarter mile at a time?
I wouldn't phrase it any other way. Yes, I of course do, Ty.
What are we down to now?
Today I hit 133.
133.
Right. So it's low 6 mile.
Okay. Are you
I look
training?
like a madman, just all out sprinting in the middle of New York, but I feel good about it.
Are you training for something specific, like a relay race of some sort?
No,
What is
not
your
at
ambition here?
My ambition is basically, I get very bored running, even though I like listening to podcasts when I run, and I've been reading more and more that distance running is just not that great for your joints and for anything, and I'm not getting younger, Ty.
Right.
I hope that's not a misnomer. And I've also read that, high interval and sprint and really electric workouts, Ty, real good for the metab. And I'm a slave to the metab, Ty.
Sure.
Everybody knows that about me. So I've been mixing in a lot more sprints, and the only way I can really get into it is if I'm competing with myself and others, really. But I'm feeling good.
So just a boy out there running his heart out, listening to hardcore history.
That's exactly what I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you for joining us here on the podcast. Big thanks to our guest of honor last week, Adam Kramer from Bleacher Report, who was so kind as to join you and to talk all sorts of college football things. Excuse me. Always great to have Adam on. I'm sad I missed it, but as people who listen to this show are well aware, I'm still very much in the process of moving and getting myself all sorted out. So I thought I had everything in place before recording last week, but that was not the case. So thank you to you. Thank you to Adam for pinch hitting for me in my absence, but I'm back. I am back.
You're back,
here.
baby. We hit over-under win total stuff. We talked about, he did a story on it's sort of the Tagovailoa family and sort of just focusing on Talia, Tua's younger brother, who's still in high school and a top high school prospect.
He's the righty?
He is the righty, correct.
Okay.
And then we talked summer things, which I missed you because you always have really good, if not controversial, if not completely incorrect opinions about broad life things.
Sure, right.
Whereas I think I was mostly in agreement with Adam. So there wasn't tension. He just had very good opinions about summer.
Well, we're excited about tonight's show. We actually have a cool little concept here that we're going to trot out momentarily.
Yes.
But of course, if you're a new listener, we're going to be here all off season long talking college football things and life things, whatever we can talk about, basically until we get to like August when it comes time to actually start talking about teams and previews and whatnot. But
yes,
as always, you can find us at itunes.com/solidverbal. We also have a Facebook, a Twitter, an Instagram. They started a subreddit. Some of our most ardent supporters out at reddit.com/r/solidverbal. We've got a new website that is very much in the pipeline and looking awesome. Thanks to our friends over at Superboss. We'll be talking much more about that in the coming days and weeks. We've got shirts and mugs and hats and all sorts of fun merchandise on the way as well that we can get out to you, we promise, in time for the start of the season. And we're going to keep updating that with new merch all throughout the calendar year. So exciting times ahead here on The Verbal. And that's all to say that we've got a live show coming up.
Yes. Should we just say the date, even though we're not confirmed still?
Well, okay.
Just so people know?
I mean, I guess. Why not?
All right. It's going to be Saturday, August 11th.
Yes.
So early to mid-August. Now that we've said it, Ty, one way or another, we might just have a gathering in a park.
I was going to say, this could be on the shores of Lake Michigan if we're unable to find a proper venue. We're very much getting help.
Yes.
Trying to find that venue. By professionals, right. We're looking into all sorts of options for venues. So the planning process is well underway. It's just that's going to be the date. We had a couple people write in and ask, and I think we both feel bad about keeping people on the hook any longer than we have to.
Right. People are booking flights or car rides or just figuring out weekend plans for the summer. It seems right.
We are very much banking on August the 11th. So
yes,
let us know if you'll be in town, either for the show or for the after party, which will be somewhere too.
Much easier to book a wedding venue in Chicago for me.
Yes.
Than to find a place that will house about 300 people and has some food and drink and maybe a little stage and some audio equipment. Chicago's a major city, live performance city, but it's been tricky finding. We're trying to Goldilocks this, Ty. We're trying to get one that's just right. And
so it's either going to be at a sports bar or Jim Delaney's house. We'll let you know.
Does he live in Chicago? I guess he probably does live in Chicago.
Maybe Dave Revson will let us have it.
I was going to say either Dave Revson or Mike Hall. I know Adam Amin doesn't have a house. He has an apartment, so that's probably not conducive. But they probably have homes, possibly with backyards. You know what? My in-laws, if you want to come to the suburbs, my in-laws have a robust backyard.
I'm thinking flash mob, but podcast, a flash pod somewhere on Michigan Avenue. Also an option.
The Northwestern facility is quite nice, but we don't want to do Evanston. Evanston's cool, but come on. We got to get in the city.
Anyway, there you go. August the 11th in Chicago. We're excited. It's going to be awesome. Fantasy Things Draft 2018. Lots of cool stuff ahead. All right.
Yes.
What is the concept? This was actually your idea, as so many of our great ideas on this podcast come from you. What is the concept this evening?
It's a very cute way of playing devil's advocate in June.
Right.
So this is my precursor, my warning. We don't want bad things. We're not rooting for bad things. We want everybody to succeed, even though mathematically that's not possible. But we're just here to ask some questions, Ty. And today's main question is, are we sure? And we have a number of college football topics, I think, as it relates to this season or just broader, but it has to do with this season. Like, for instance, are we sure that Dan is a vital part to the Solid Verbal? I don't know.
Right.
I don't honestly know.
Okay.
But we're going to be asking these questions. Are we sure that this piece of conventional wisdom is something that should and has earned the right to be conventional wisdom?
Okay. So if I said to you, are we sure that there are only 18 McCaffrey brothers?
Yeah, I am fully prepared for there to be secret McCaffreys.
Okay.
Also, that would be a very good name for a fantasy, or not a fantasy, but like a pick'em pool entry or a bowl pick'em entry.
Secret McCaffreys?
Secret McCaffreys.
There is another
fantasy
now.
Baseball team, whatever.
Luke, did I see it's Luke McCaffrey?
Yeah, there's a fourth McCaffrey that will play college football, FBS level, Power 5 level. I think we had Max at Duke, Christian at Stanford, Dylan at Michigan, and now Luke at Nebraska? Yeah, Nebraska.
Eddie McCaffrey, very fertile. Very fertile.
Unbelievable. And apparently the credit all should go to the mother. She is apparently a terrific athlete in her own right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. So basically we are challenging conventional wisdom here.
Yes.
Are we sure blank is blank?
Mm-hmm. That's 100% the game.
Okay.
And we are going to posit a situation and then we're going to talk it out. Okay.
Where do you want to start? Where are we going first?
Let's start here because this is what started our conversation. Actually, we asked on Twitter, and one of our viewers, listeners, whatever, followers tweeted us this exact thing, and we already had it. Number one, are we sure Shea Patterson is good?
Oh.
So are we sure, because a lot has been made of Shea Patterson and the drama transferring away from Ole Miss, obviously an extremely touted recruit, going to Oxford, gets in as a true freshman, plays as a sophomore before getting injured about halfway through the season, announces his intention to transfer, quickly visits Michigan, commits to Michigan, transfers to Michigan, then gets the waiver to play immediately because of circumstances at Ole Miss and why he had to transfer. And there seems to be a sigh of relief because he is seen as, Savior is going way too far, but he is seen as solidifying a position that has not really been all that solid these past couple of seasons.
It seems like Michigan fans are very hopeful, to say the least, about what
and that's fine. That's
Shea Patterson could provide for them at the quarterback position, right?
Yeah, and they should be. I mean, I think, because if you're not hopeful in June, why are you a college football fan?
Right. So Shea Patterson, in case you haven't listened to our show, won a ruling with the NCAA, claims that he was misled at Ole Miss. Therefore, his transfer request should be processed immediately. And by transfer request, I basically mean his eligibility should start right away. You shouldn't have to sit out a year in going to Michigan. Now, Michigan's very excited about this because the quarterback spot has been a bit of a bugaboo for our friend Jim Harbaugh now ever since he got there. They've never really had a good permanent solution at the quarterback position.
Right.
So Shea Patterson comes over from Ole Miss. He's obviously got a lot of talent, former 5-star recruit, did some nice things during his time in Oxford. He comes over, all of a sudden, things are looking a little bit more upbeat for Michigan at that spot.
Yes, and I will only speak for myself, but let's be clear. It's better for us if he's good. We want good quarterback play. We want good football. So we are hoping maybe it was just a situational thing with everything that was going on in Oxford. That said, I was expecting him to get noticeably better last year, even with everything swirling in Oxford, even with a pretty tough schedule. I know they had Alabama and Auburn on the road, both on the road in consecutive weeks. They went to Cal early on, which shouldn't have been that much trouble, but seemed to have been some trouble. He threw 3 picks in that game. I went back and rewatched a number of the games from last year. And again, a lot goes into offensive success, whether it's coaches, line, skill position players. And mind you, he had probably one of the best 3 receivers in college football last year in A.J. Brown. But I was watching Shea Patterson, and that's when the question struck me. Like, he seems okay and has a couple of moments, but he's a little bit shorter. He tends to overthrow. His footwork seems like it needs, I mean, no pun intended, some strides. And made some mistakes. Like, my guy, you lost 66-3. You and your team to Alabama. This is a great Alabama team. So I didn't even watch much of that game. I watched the next week against Auburn because I think that says a lot. And he'll be judged in Ann Arbor with regards to how Michigan does against Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, and this year, certainly Notre Dame to open up the season.
Yeah.
And against LSU, it was kind of a nightmare and obviously was wounded. But I watched that Auburn game because he threw 51 passes. And they were down something like 38-3 at halftime. I forgot that it got so out of hand so quickly. It was not, if I were watching that through a maize and blue tinted lens, I think I would be a bit deflated. Is what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't know that he is just, I mean, he's going to start as he should because of it. I think their options right now are not great.
Right.
So he should slide in. But unless the offense at Michigan, which we've had offensive line issues these past couple of years, I think decent running backs, you know, a couple of intriguing wideouts, I think. But in terms of what this offense has looked like creatively and consistency wise, I'm not ready to slide in Shea Patterson and say, this is a major, major deal, because I don't know if I'm fully seeing it right now.
I think that's fair. Right? There's definitely a little bit of hopefulness on the part of Michigan fans. You know, we've often heard the expression about the backup quarterback being the most popular guy on campus. Sure. There's some element of that here because Shea Patterson, at least as it relates to being a Michigan football player, is a great unknown. He represents, I think, something that could be and something that I think a lot of Michigan fans wanted the quarterback position to be under Jim Harbaugh. He just hasn't had that breakthrough yet. Now, we saw Wilton Speight go elsewhere. He's going to be playing some role for UCLA. We don't know what. And right. I think you're right in saying that Shea Patterson represents the best option for Jim Harbaugh at this point. We'll see what he can do. He's still fairly young.
Yeah.
And
so it'll be his third year. He'll be a junior, a true junior.
Jim Harbaugh does have a bit of a track record for spinning gold at the quarterback position, though we haven't seen it quite yet in Ann Arbor. Shea Patterson probably represents the most talent that he's had since he started at Michigan.
Yeah,
so we'll see what he can do.
The great news, aside from a pretty tricky schedule, is that Michigan's defense should look very good. I would assume, just with the number of talented guys that have come back, how well Michigan has recruited on defense. And the gold spinning part to me in college, in this recent Michigan stint, not Stanford or San Diego or whatever, the gold spinning was probably limited to only the second half of Jake Rudock's season, his one grad transfer year, which was
and that's
very good, and I would say somewhat unforeseen given Rudock's history. But the Wilton Speight era was largely dependent on defense. Last year was a mess because of injuries, but the defense was still there. So the good news for Shea Patterson and for whoever ends up succeeding or quasi-succeeding at quarterback, which I assume will be the case, is the defense should often enough put the offense in a good enough position that they get short fields, that they're playing with leads or whatever. But my confidence in Shea Patterson driving the ball downfield is not super high right now.
I think I'll say this about your question. I'm not sure that he's good, but I'm sure that his floor is higher than we've seen at Michigan in a couple years. And I'm also sure that the parts around him at Michigan will support him better than the parts at Ole Miss. A lot was on his arm down there in Oxford. I think it will be spread out a little bit more. Responsibilities will be spread out more in Ann Arbor than they were in Oxford.
I'll twist it like this. Are we sure Shea Patterson is good? No. I am sure Shea Patterson is pretty good.
Okay.
But that may not matter given some context.
All right, let me stay on the quarterback front. We've actually got a couple other ones here on the quarterback front, but are we sure, that Tua Tagovailoa is better than Jalen Hurts?
Right.
Now, this seems to be conventional wisdom because obviously he came in, he won that overtime thriller in the college football playoff national championship game. Mm-hmm. It has been assumed in the early going here in the preseason that Tua is going to be the starter in Tuscaloosa. There's no reason to kind of back off that assumption. I think we're all kind of proceeding under that assumption.
Sure.
But if I just want to play devil's advocate here for the hell of it.
Please.
He played 9 games in garbage time, or I should say 8 games in garbage time.
Right.
Threw 77 passes all last season. If it weren't for the comeback victory in overtime against Georgia in the championship, do you think we would still be having this discussion about who's going to be starting quarterback this year?
I think if not for Tua, there's a good chance Alabama loses that game, right?
Agreed.
So in the wake of losing because of quarterback play on the biggest possible stage, I think by now, in the middle of June, plenty of people, either with Alabama allegiances or otherwise, would have talked themselves into Tua. That Jalen Hurts is good for games 1 through Auburn, or 1 until Auburn, or something like that. 1 until Auburn. And then there's just, he's just like a 7-inning starter and just doesn't have the stuff to close out a game. And Jalen Hurts has had a remarkable young career.
He's been incredible.
Right. And maybe it's a confidence issue. Maybe it's been injury stuff. Maybe it's, been the fact that, and this is something Tua is going to be facing as well. Tua was recruited by Lane Kiffin to a whatever extent. And then he had, this past season was Brian Dable, who has moved on. I think he's in Buffalo. Is that right?
Yep, Buffalo.
And now it's Mike Locksley, who ascends from, he started there as a an offensive analyst. Now they have a co-offensive coordinator. I think it was the Penn State wide receivers coach, Josh Gaddis.
Yep.
And then Dan Enos comes over and he takes over as a quarterback's coach and so like associate head coach, whatever. So I'm just saying there are a lot of voices in Tua's head. This is also to say he returns 4 out of 5 offensive linemen.
Well,
in front of him, has a ridiculous backfield and has, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, whatever. But I think what is the crux of what makes you doubt Tua right now?
I think that I when I see a game like this, like we saw in the national championship, I hearken back to the days of Trevor Knight at Oklahoma when they beat, I guess, Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. Remember?
Yeah.
And coming out of that game, Trevor Knight was all world everything. It didn't materialize for him. He was okay, right? But it didn't materialize in quite the manner that a lot expected. Now, I'm not saying Tua is the next Trevor Knight, but I'm always a little hesitant to stake too much on a singular performance. There's no denying that what he did in that national championship game elevated Alabama to a point where they could win. Jalen Hurts was not giving them the answer in that game. So I think you're right. If it weren't for Tua coming in, we're probably talking about this in a different context, and it probably still goes to the same spot where Tua is the presumed starter. But I'm always very, very hesitant to just put too much on one singular performance when, let's be honest, the previous 8 games, the previous 50 throws in his career were mostly in mop-up duty or garbage
Low
time.
stakes. Yeah.
So we got to see what he can do throughout the totality of an SEC season, a lot of other big games. Certainly Alabama in the SEC West is never short on those. But I guess my only hesitation would be that he doesn't quite have the experience that Jalen Hurts has. Jalen Hurts, for his part, even though he has had a couple rough patches in the latter part of his 2 seasons now as quarterback, he's still been pretty good. He's still got the record.
Sure.
If you really
and does not make mistakes.
Doesn't make mistakes for the most part. Also, if you really want to play devil's advocate, the all-time question here is whether or not Tua or Jalen really even matter in that offense. Sort of alluding to your earlier point. Having a better quarterback always matters, but there is so much ammo around them that it definitely matters less at Alabama than it would at a place like Notre Dame.
Well, it also doesn't matter as much when you have to score 17 points to win.
Sure. Right. No, across the board.
So Tua's well built, which I think is nice, even though he's listed at 6'1". I don't know if he's above 5'10 and a half, 5'11. Maybe he is. It's always entirely possible I'm wrong. It's almost assuredly the case. But Tua is not super battle tested, and in that national championship game there were certainly throws and plays. Like, I feel like when you sign up for Tua, you are signing up for the Tua experience. For better or worse, in obviously a lesser way at this point than Johnny Manziel, the Johnny football experience, because that is a special talent. But here is the outstanding news. I think it's sort of a dual prong bit of outstanding news about Tua or whoever actually ends up starting. Schedule's not terrible.
No.
Especially in the first half of the season. They open against Louisville. Do you happen to remember who Louisville's defensive coordinator is? Their new defensive coordinator.
They made the trade, didn't they?
Well, they made the trade, but then they got rid of Peter Sermon.
Yeah.
B, V, G, B, V.
Yeah, I know. It's
G,
Brian Van Gorder. Don't make me say it.
Okay.
I know who it is.
So that's pretty good. That's a pretty good way to start. So you have Louisville. I don't forget where they're playing. I think it's Orlando or something. Arkansas State, Ole Miss on the road, Texas A&M. That's a Mike Elko defense with talent. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that should be by week, and it's week 4, somewhat intimidating. They have the Raging Cajuns week 5. They go to Arkansas. It's a John Chavis defense. I'm not super thrilled with Arkansas right now. Mizzou, at Tennessee, at LSU in pseudo. They have a bye week between them. So it takes until that at Tennessee, at LSU, and then Mississippi State run late October, early November until I have actual concern that a quarterback will be exposed, whoever that quarterback is. That's pretty good.
Okay. So what I'm going to say here, and then we'll move on because we've got 4 more of these that I think are all equally riveting. I am not sure, quite honestly, that Tua is better than Jalen Hurts.
Right.
I do think, though, because of what we've seen out of Jalen Hurts, I am sure I know what Jalen Hurts is as a quarterback. And because of that, I'm more excited about Tua. But Tua is by no means a proven commodity at this point.
What I do like about Tua that I'm not positive Jalen Hurts still possesses or does possess, and he has been quite fun to watch these past couple of years for the most part because of his dual threat ability, is Tua doesn't care. Tua will go downfield. I mean, I'm not even talking about that play, that the Devontae Smith ridiculous, throw over cover 2. I look at Tua and I say, this dude is going to just gun it in. He's going to throw downfield. He's going to connect. And I think he is more of a playmaker with his arm and has a fearless quality that I don't think Jalen Hurts quite possesses, that it seems like, barring some kind of fall camp meltdown. I know he was sort of nicked up, had a finger issue, I think, or a hand issue over spring. I am more intrigued by his ceiling than Jalen Hurts, which is crazy.
Yeah, right.
Because Jalen Hurts has done nothing but lead them to the championship game in his 2 seasons.
All right. Where are we going next here? Your turn.
All right. Let's go to, are we sure? I like you've thrown in a couple here, but I'll go to one of mine. Are we sure that Mike Gundy is, I'm going to go positive with this. Are we sure that Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State head coach, is not a top 8-ish coach and the clear best head coach in the Big 12 at this point?
Now that Bob Stoops is head coach in the Big 12.
I believe that he is. Are we sure that he is not, basically, are we sure that he is like a second tier national head coach? And I understand that there are people that are going to say, well, he's never been to the playoff. He's never been to, a huge game. And certainly in 2011, there's a case to be made that Oklahoma State should have been.
Right.
But because of his consistency, I think they've won 10 games 4 out of the past 5 seasons. He consistently develops NFL players. Oklahoma State is not in an advantageous place within their own state, let alone the conference. And certainly T. Boone Pickens has poured a lot of money into that program and improved things greatly. But Oklahoma is, without a doubt, the headline program in Oklahoma. And now that Bob Stoops is gone, who was the clear answer for a very, very, very long time, and probably in some ways underrated as a football coach. But Mike Gundy at this point, and I think there's only one other coach with this claim, and that's probably Gary Patterson,
right,
in the Big 12 at this point. I think Mike Gundy has done a better job within the context of Oklahoma State without having the Mountain West runway that Gary Patterson has had. I think Mike Gundy is 3-2 over the last 5 years against TCU. Oklahoma State is, mind you. I think Mike Gundy, to me, is crazy underrated with what he's done there and should be in conversations with the list of college football's top tier coaches.
Wow. Okay. So let's go through, first off, who the coaches are in the Big 12. To argue whether or not he's a top 8 coach, I think is fair. I think you could put him in the top 8 without even trying to go through all the coaches in college football. I think he's been consistent enough at a place that can be difficult to recruit to that he deserves to be in that conversation.
Yeah.
The bigger question is he the best in the Big 12? So let's go through it.
Please.
Let's go through it. Matt Rule at Baylor. He's better than Matt Rule. At this point, more consistent, longer career. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Accomplished.
Matt Campbell, for sure, better than Matt Campbell. David Beatty, I'm not even going to dignify that.
Right.
Bill Snyder. Is he better than Bill Snyder?
It depends what you want to... I'm judging over the past 5 years.
He's better than Bill Snyder.
I went back to 2011, so we can even go back to 2011, and Bill Snyder had a very good 2012 with Kansas State. I would say right now...
I think you could argue that Bill Snyder has done more with less in spots throughout his career.
Sure.
But Mike Gundy
within the context, Bill Snyder, yes.
Mike Gundy has been so terribly consistent at Oklahoma State. It's tough to put Snyder in front of him, so we're going to say Gundy.
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley, really just getting started. If he continues on his current trajectory, he's probably the answer in a couple of years. But
Yeah, I mean, that's entirely possible, but one season in without a roster he recruited and assembled, whatever. Yes, I'm going with Gundy here.
He's better than Cliff Kingsbury. He's better than Dana Holgerson. Where it gets interesting is when you get to Tom Herman and Gary Patterson.
Okay.
So Tom Herman could be another guy who is eventually the answer here.
Mm-hmm.
Could. Operative word, could. Hasn't done a lot yet at Texas. I think Texas is primed for big things, but that's really been the case since we started this show back in 2008.
It's true.
You've never talked
Listen,
me
they
off
were
that
good in
Texas point.
2009. Did they make it to the national championship game? Yeah.
So Tom Herman could eventually be the answer here. Probably isn't yet. Doesn't have a long enough track record. Talk to me about Gary Patterson, though.
Sure. What do you want to know?
Mike Gundy versus Gary Patterson.
So the case is Gary Patterson's recent lows have been lower.
Agreed.
Gary Patterson was able to assemble a roster, and this is credit to Gary Patterson. This is not a knock, but it's something that Mike Gundy didn't have. He was able to assemble a roster and build systems in the Mountain West, right? Not, with the pressures of the Big 12, and had time to sort of make that transition in a very smooth, clean way. Whereas Mike Gundy was sort of thrust into this role when Les Miles left. So I'm going to give him a slight advantage in that even down seasons, Oklahoma State is making bowl games. Now, there is one clear knock, I think, on Mike Gundy and his resume. I don't believe he's won a game in Norman. I want to say he's 2-12 against Oklahoma. And if we're going to espouse the theory that college football is most fun when you're just hoping your team wins regular season games, beats more rivals than not, and whatever happens with the playoff and with bowls happens, but those are the most important things. It's hard to say he is a top-tier coach when he's 2-12 against a rival. That is where I will definitely concede ground.
He's very consistent. So he's been at Oklahoma State now 12 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
He only had one losing season, his first, when he went 4-7. But beyond that,
right,
he's had double-digit wins 6 times. There are a lot of 7-win seasons in there. And by a lot, I guess I only mean 3. He's won 9 games a couple times, 8 games once. He's been very consistent. And that's really all you can ask as a head football coach of a major college institution, to be that consistent when, sorry, Oklahoma State, you are sort of second fiddle to Oklahoma, sort of second fiddle to Texas in the Big 12 in terms of prominence.
Sure.
But to be that consistent is certainly saying something. I say, as of now, you're probably right.
Okay.
Almost definitely the best coach in the Big 12.
And out-recruited by at least 3 schools.
For sure. Now, the more I think about this, I don't want to just gloss over the top 8 part of your question.
Okay.
Top 8, he's borderline top 8.
Okay.
Borderline top 8. You got a lot of coaching ammo in the SEC. You got a lot of coaching ammo.
Do you think Jim Harbaugh is a better coach at Michigan right now than Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State?
No.
I don't think so.
No. But top 8's pushing it. He's a bubble team if your cutoff is top 8. A lot of coaching ammo in the SEC. A lot of coaching ammo in the Big 10. A lot of coaching ammo in the Pac-12, even though we're going to talk about the Pac-12 in a more negative connotation in a little bit. But top eight's pushing it. He's a bubble team in that regard.
Okay, fair enough.
Changed my mind mid question here, Dan.
Okay, I think he's a threat, a top 8 threat.
Fair. Let's stay in the Big 12 here for this next question. Another one, actually, I've got the tweet deck up, and we had a gentleman by the name of Justin who wanted to talk about Kyler Murray. I'm going to put this spin on it, okay? Are we sure that Kyler Murray is worth all the emotional energy for Oklahoma fans?
Wow, what a complicated way of thinking about it. Okay.
College football is nothing if not an emotional game, Dan. That's why I phrase it the way I do. Okay. So here's where we're at, okay? Oklahoma fans were incredibly fortunate to have Baker Mayfield as their quarterback for the last couple years. Baker won the Heisman. Baker took them to new heights, obviously made the playoff. Just an electric player an incredible offense last season in Norman. Record-setting in many regards.
Yeah, of course.
So that was all in Lincoln Riley's first year. And all the while, they've had this guy, Kyler Murray, who came over from Texas A&M when that situation went boom. He's been the backup. He's been the backup in waiting. Now he kind of gets his chance to step into the limelight. He's a smaller guy than Baker Mayfield. He's listed at like 5'11", 188, 190, somewhere in that regard. Baker Mayfield wasn't your prototypical NFL starting quarterback mold either, but Kyler is smaller. He's smaller. Might be more gifted as a runner. Remains to be seen how gifted he is as a thrower in comparison to Baker Mayfield, but nonetheless, he's got a lot of talent. And there's great reason to be excited. The other subplot is that Kyler Murray was just drafted 9th overall by the Oakland A's in the Major League Baseball draft. Today, he signed a deal with the A's. He's going to get $5 million and, get this, the right to play football, but only this season for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Only this season. So he's basically a one and done, which is a crazy risk by the A's. But when you layer the baseball on top of the fact that we've still got a limited amount of data on this kid as a football player, he's certainly not going to grow with the Oklahoma program. He's probably an injury risk given his smaller stature. If I'm an Oklahoma fan, Dan, it almost feels like a publicity stunt. I know it isn't, but I would just be very skeptical that this whole thing is going to work.
All fair. And was extraordinary in high school and inconsistent, but made some plays at Texas A&M while he was there briefly. I think there's an assumption that because of the combination of Kyler Murray's talent, his undeniable talent, the talent around him on Oklahoma's offense, the continuity of coaches now with Lincoln Riley and the coaches around Lincoln Riley, and Lincoln Riley's brain coupled with Kyler Murray's ability, that things are just going to continue apace in Norman. What I think that does unintentionally, that line of thinking, is it says Baker Mayfield was a system guy. There's a little bit of that. And I think it devalues and sort of underrates or whatever, or dismisses almost just how ridiculous Baker Mayfield was.
Yeah, he was incredible.
Like, Lincoln Riley can come up with these plays, and he certainly did, and his play calling can be timely. Baker Mayfield throws a hell of a ball. Baker Mayfield did not back down from any throws, from any plays. Baker Mayfield is a generational talent for Oklahoma. As strange as it is to say, he was just mind-bogglingly efficient. And so I think the line of thinking is, well, somebody as talented as Kyler Murray can surely keep that going in Norman. And I don't know if that's the case. And I don't know if it's because he's slight of build. I would be a little bit more worried about how things transpired when it got rough at Texas A&M with his offensive coaches and, reportedly with his dad and coaches. That to me, and certainly Baker Mayfield has, there are stories about Baker Mayfield's dad, true or not, but that to me is a little bit more worrisome from afar, granted, that we are just penciling in the empire to continue when what Baker Mayfield did is essentially impossible.
Man, it is just tough when you know going in that any success you have at quarterback is going to be short-lived. I guess maybe you treat it like a grad transfer. We're all kind of conditioned for that.
Yeah.
You just know there are going to be fans who demand total commitment to the team, pick one or the other.
It's tough to be that kind of pragmatic at 2021.
No, it's impossible.
When, play quarterback for Oklahoma, play minor league baseball and hope, because I think everybody looks at him baseball wise, and I will never pretend to be some kind of baseball scout, but they look at him as, unbelievable athleticism and bat speed is off the charts and, has taken huge strides, but still green, still a project. Whereas with football, I think he's more of a known quantity. It doesn't appear that he is going to be a first or second round NFL player, but who knows? It's tough, though, to say forego the glory of playing quarterback at Oklahoma versus playing, what does he play? Second base, shortstop?
Outfield. I think he's a center fielder.
Oh, he's a center fielder. Okay.
Yeah.
So there is some glory in center field, picking off home runs over the wall, whatever. But to play baseball and to look at baseball as a moment of glory, I think it's tougher. That's my dumb opinion.
Well,
as we're in college football podcast.
We're in our 30s.
Yes, that's true.
And have never achieved any height such as this on the athletic stage.
Ty, you missed. It's a minute 33 quarter mile, Ty. It's a minute 33, which might not sound fast to anybody listening, and that's because it's not.
So yeah, Dan, this is a weird one. If you're an Oklahoma fan, I think you treat it like a grad transfer. I think you enjoy the ride. You hope for Kyler's sake that he doesn't blow a knee, but either way, congrats to him on getting drafted because that's really awesome. And, let's just see how this all goes. 2 more here.
Yeah.
Should we just combine them?
Sure. Let's do it.
Because we're running short on time. So we've got two Pac-12 related questions.
The question demand Pac-12 content.
The question that I wanted to ask is higher level. And it was, are we sure that there is someone actually running the Pac-12 conference? Someone actually creating a long-term strategy for the Pac-12 conference.
Right.
Yours was more micro in the sense you asked, are we sure that the, universally lauded Pac-12 South hires, not Herm Edwards, we're going to exclude him from this equation. But
who might be successful, but yeah.
Are we sure that Chip Kelly and Kevin Sumlin are the home run hires that we've been led to believe?
Right.
So I'll answer that second question by saying that I am not at all convinced that Kevin Sumlin's a home run hire for many of the reasons that I have mentioned over the last couple months here on the podcast. He feels a lot to me like the previous guy, like Rich Rodriguez. There's a lot of overlap there. And because of that, I don't feel like he gives them a whole lot more than where they were at previously. So unless you've got a different definition of home run hire, I think he's a capable replacement. And I think a change of scenery, both for him and maybe for Rich Rod, is a good thing for them professionally. I think it'll work out just fine for Arizona. But if they end up looking exactly the way that they looked in 2017, I will not at all be surprised. For UCLA, Chip Kelly's a home run. He can go 5-7 and he's still a home run. He brings more excitement to that program than anyone else they could have possibly hired. If you're UCLA, you absolutely have to take a chance and see what Chip Kelly can bring the Westwood. So I'm fine.
Sure.
I'm fine with labeling him as a home run, but not Kevin Sumlin.
So do you want to start with the macro, the big picture?
Sure, you can. Go ahead.
All right. So is somebody running the Pac-12?
Maybe.
Yes.
Is really?
So
okay.
I'm a big proponent of swings. And that's another baseball term, Ty.
Swings. Okay. Go on.
So the Pac-12 has been rightly criticized for the way its media deal has unfolded. They decided to keep 100% of the network, and the Pac-12 network hasn't gotten the type of distribution I think that they were hoping it would in some form with, DirecTV and digital means and whatever. A lot of complaints about bigger games starting, and by complaints, I'm sort of separating it from myself. It's me complaining.
Here's what this means. What this means that what people might read about. You can't get the Pac-12 network on DirecTV.
Correct.
You still can't get it on DirecTV. They've had the network.
I don't believe you can get it on like a Roku or an Apple TV as a standalone. You can get it, via, whatever service, YouTube or Hulu or something like that. Correct? Right.
You're limited, and it still is stuck in a lot of craws that you can't get it on DirecTV. There's a lot of finger pointing as to why that's the case. The conventional wisdom, and the one that seems to make the most sense to me, is that the Pac-12 network deployed this strategy where they were going to go out to individual cable providers, they were going to cut deals, and then by proxy, they were going to make it almost such that DirecTV had to pick them up. that they had no choice. It was everywhere else. DirecTV would be missing out if they didn't. That strategy has not materialized in the way that I think the Pac-12 had envisioned, and so it comes across as a gross miscalculation.
Sure. And so the miscalculation specifically is that instead of partnering with an existing network in the way that the Big Ten and SEC and now ACC, I think that launches next year, 2019, the ACC network.
With ESPN, sure.
With ESPN, yeah, is that they are foregoing leverage to say, ESPN suddenly has, if ESPN has the Pac-12 network, they can say, okay, unless you accept the Pac-12 network as part of a standard deal or as part of this kind of tier DirecTV, we're not sure if we can do this for you or that for you. Obviously everybody is going to need ESPN that is a sports fan that has DirecTV, which is a company that directly tries to appeal to sports fans with their NFL Sunday ticket package and whatever. And it's a national satellite package, whatever. I'm saying whatever a lot because I'm trying to get past my frustration with this. The Pac-12, though, it took a swing. It tried to do something new. It tried to get attention. It did get attention. It tried to take chances, and I am all for this. But you need to have a backup plan if things don't go as, maybe it's ESPN owns a third of it or Fox owns a third of it. Maybe it's you keep 2/3 of it, whatever, so you retain a lot of creative control and distribution control or whatever. But so I appreciate that. I appreciate going out on a limb to do something new. But no backup plan, and the fact that, and I know people are going to point to the bowl record last year, that's super embarrassing.
1-8.
It's not meaningful, but it's very public, which there is I think there is a gray area between those two things. So I am positive the Pac-12 will be fine because the Pac-12 was never going to be the SEC or the Big Ten or even the ACC in terms of viewer interest. They just need to do a better job of figuring out how to get good coaches out west, which I think is a challenge on the way up, and putting their games in, whether it's, the Friday night, Thursday night thing sucks, but if you schedule around it and make sure teams have buys and everything like that, it works. You need to get your team's attention. You need to market these games. And especially when you have a ranked Stanford against a ranked UCLA, a ranked Oregon against a ranked Washington, a ranked USC against a ranked ASU, you need to do a better job of not just putting it at 10:45 Eastern on a Thursday. That can never, ever happen. There needs to be outs to the scheduling.
Let me ask you this. I'll follow this up, okay?
Yeah.
There's no denying, because of the time zone issue, that the Pac-12 is put at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. That is a built-in disadvantage that they have to deal with.
It's smaller alumni bases.
And smaller alumni bases. There are a couple things working, a couple headwinds there working against the Pac-12. Do you feel like their inability to maybe grow the brand is due to leadership or due more to logistical issues, things that are beyond their control, like we've referenced here?
So it's always going to be column A, column B, column C. I think the thing that's probably hurt the Pac-12 the most is that on the biggest stages, and I'm not talking about the Holiday Bowl or something like that. I'm talking USC, Alabama, Oregon, LSU at the beginning of the season, Oregon fading at the back half of the Mark Helfrich era, Washington being really good, but difficult to market, I would say. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Style of play is just very efficient and nothing, too electric. UCLA being down as long as they have, the Arizona schools never really breaking through. I would say realignment hasn't been the best for the Pac-12. That's a whole other thing, Ty. If we could add like a bonus question, are we sure realignment has been exciting for college football?
A totally different question, but sure.
But for the Pac-12 specifically, Colorado and Utah have not driven national or even huge regional interest. So I think it's a combination of all of these things. The quickest way for the Pac-12 to see an uptick in attention and ratings and, how to market themselves, you got to win big games on big stages and make people aware of your brand as something impressive and worth watching. And Oregon did a good job of that. USC did a phenomenal job of that for about 6, 7, 8 years. But beyond that, the Pac-12's margin for error when it comes to attention and viability is so much thinner than everybody else's in terms of Power 5 conference.
I would agree with that, and I think because of that, you need to come up with, as you put it, a backup plan where you basically just flood the market. You know, they've got all sorts of Silicon Valley tie-ins being where they are.
Sure.
Put your games on YouTube. I understand that might not be profitable, but find a way to do it. Just get it out there so that people have something to watch.
Right.
I think if you take another chance, bet on where we're headed as media consumers. Bet on streaming. Bet on cool things that maybe aren't being tried elsewhere, just to try and position yourself as a conference as a forward-leaning thing.
Do you watch YouTube on your TV? Not talking YouTube TV, which I know you have.
Right.
I'm talking specifically, will you watch like Hot Ones or whatever on your TV?
Generally, no.
I do.
Okay.
Every day.
Okay.
I think things are going there more and more. You just got a new TV, right?
I just got a new TV. I don't think, because I don't watch YouTube, I don't think that's a representative sample.
Fair.
I think it's getting easier to stream that kind of stuff. And at a minimum, people are way more comfortable with it now than they were 3 years ago.
For sure.
It is the direction that things are headed. So if you're the Pac-12, really, if you're anybody, to enable that kind of distribution, I think works in your favor. I don't know why.
How do you like YouTube TV, by the way?
I love it. I love it.
Have you done a season with it yet?
Yeah, I did a season with it last year.
You did it last year? Quality with like there was no like downgrading of.
I could be their chief evangelist for the product.
What was the lag time between what you saw on your screen and what you saw on Twitter?
A little difficult. About 15
I found that to be the case. I had Sling TV for a season. It was the same thing.
About 15 seconds, but
that's not terrible.
In general, and this is no disrespect to our friends on Twitter, it doesn't add as much to the experience as I think people on Twitter would love to believe.
Sure, that's fair.
You can't watch Twitter simultaneous to the game.
Yeah, the problem. Yeah, I tend to, because I like seeing things. It's not about reacting at the same time. It's like, oh, look at this ridiculous flip into the end zone from Marshall UCF. You know, I like having Twitter open so I can sort of scan across whether for visual things or injuries or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a really good news feed. So all of a sudden, like if everybody's watching Oklahoma, Texas, and everybody starts screaming about, you know, a ridiculous Puna Ford pick six or something like that, it's kind of a bummer. Not a deterrent, but kind of a bummer.
It is kind of a bummer. It's going to require a bit of a behavior change, but I think I already adapted to it. The national championship being a good example. Just close the laptop for a little bit. Watch the broadcast. Really take it in. Don't be distracted by what's going on the computer monitor or the phone or the iPad.
Like some kind of human being, Ty?
Yep. You know it. Get back to where we started from. All right. So that's the Pac-12. So I guess our conclusion here is that, yes, someone's running it. We're sketchy on the backup plan. And at least me, and I'm sure you, would like to see them come up with something more of a forward-leaning strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the TV deals are up anytime soon, so I don't know how exactly they can pivot. I know they just hired somebody. I saw a short interview, I think it was with John Wilner from the San Jose Mercury News.
Yep.
They hired somebody to sort of take over content, and a lot of people feel very good about that. I don't know, it came from the Oprah network, the OWN network.
Okay.
I don't know. They're on DirecTV, I think. So hopefully that's a worthwhile hire. As for the micro tie.
Yeah. Let's talk about the
and
coaches.
also we're selling micro ties in the merch store.
Right.
As for the micro, the reason why I'm asking the question, you know, are Chip Kelly and Kevin Sumlin these lauded home run hires that it appears that they are? The reason I ask, we're not getting them choosing to be where they are. Chip Kelly would choose to be in the NFL. Kevin Sumlin it's certainly a step down from Texas A&M to Arizona. And I know a lot of people were speculating that he was going to and should have taken a year off. I know people were, there were reports of him interviewing with bigger jobs than Arizona.
Right.
So there is a sense to me that these two coaches I obviously identify, and it's a huge part of their entire identity, as being major football coaches. But I don't know that it's necessarily a winning formula, that they are going to places that will hire them.
Right. Okay.
Not the other way. You know what I'm saying? Like any country club that's willing to make me a member isn't worth being a member. You know, that kind of the old Groucho Marx thing. That this is, Chip Kelly at UCLA is a different phase Chip Kelly than Oregon Chip Kelly. And I'm hoping that's not the case, because I've loved watching his offenses with a great passion, and hope I can still watch them. And Kevin Sumlin, if he had his druthers, would be at a bigger place than Arizona. And I think this is me being bitter about something. Why couldn't they hire Ken Niumatalolo? I am still bitter, because I really think that Arizona caved to short-term thinking. And these are both basketball schools that need to think about things in a different way. And Arizona just didn't.
Well,
they did it's the exact same hire as Rich Rod.
It's the same thing. That's why I'm a little blasé on it. I like Kevin Sumlin and I like Rich Rod. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if replacing one with the other is going to move your program forward in any real way. The Chip Kelly thing, I'll just come back to what I said earlier. Chip Kelly is a home run hire for that program.
I hope so.
He's a home run hire. He's a home run hire because he infuses an excitement into that football program that we haven't seen in a long time, maybe ever. So who knows if it goes bust? Who knows if he is still at UCLA in another 5 years? But I think for the short term, to get a name like that and what he represents on the college level is very exciting. So I don't see how you could look at that any other way.
The big thing is, does he view himself now, because he's been sort of forced into it, the same way that Nick Saban looks at himself, although he did things voluntarily? You know what I do and how I operate and the type of control I like to have over a program perhaps works better with 18 to 22-year-olds than NFL players.
Yeah, right.
Has Chip Kelly made peace with that possibility?
Probably
that
not.
I don't know.
Probably not.
Okay. So I think that's important.
Probably not. I think that's a tough realization to come to. And if you're a competitive guy, if you've been at the highest levels of the game, it's tough to sort of force yourself back into that old box.
But he's a very smart dude. And obviously stories have come out after his time in the NFL. Players, either anonymously or on the record, have said, like, he tried to do this, he tried to do that. He tried, wanted us to pee every 14 minutes and, was involved in this, and then tried to become a GM. And there is a good chance that type of control, like having those types of fingerprints on a program or a team, he probably realizes that way of coaching is better off in college than in the NFL. And people talked about that with Jim Harbaugh too, that he would wear people down, that sometimes it's just more difficult to only worry about coaching than it is to fully immerse yourself in the infrastructure of basically a small company.
No.
That's my doubt. That's my doubt, is that Chip Kelly has not made peace with that yet.
Fair enough. Well, there you go. So we covered about 5.5 big topics here. Covered a couple quarterback situations, Shea Patterson, Tua, and Jalen Hurts down at Alabama, as well as Kyler Murray and what he brings to the table now for Oklahoma. Also talked about Mike Gundy on the coaching front, and then closed it out with the Pac-12.
That sounds like what we did.
Absolutely. So on that note, we made kind of an announcement here, an impromptu announcement. The live show in Chicago will be on August the 11th. Stay tuned for details on where. We actually don't know where yet. So as soon as we find out that information, we'll be sure to let you know. But keep in mind that at some point in the next couple months, we'll be putting tickets up for sale. We're also going to be putting shirts and some other merchandise up for sale here.
Yes.
In short order, as part of our new store experience, which will then usher in our new website experience, which should hopefully give all of our listeners in the Verballerhood an easier way to access all the stuff that they care about on the podcast.
You've covered it, Ty. 2 months from now. Hopefully I see you before then.
We will, for sure. We've got other fun shows that are that are afoot. We're already starting to plan them out. I'm excited about the one for next week.
Oh, man. Next week's going to be a good one. Controversial, I feel like.
Controversial, but I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Anything else? Did I leave anything out, Dan?
No, I think you hit it. I think you were pretty thorough with it. And next stop, 132.
132.
I'm going to hit that 132, baby.
All right. Well, keep us posted.
Yep.
On here, on Twitter. Wherever the Verballers are, that's where you can find us. Don't forget to look us up on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Reddit, on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. Tune in, all the usual hotspots wherever you can find a fine podcast. You can find Solid Verbal. In the meantime, for that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrandt, we'll catch you all in a week. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.